My name is Lauren Baker, and for this PowerPoint, I have decided to do my project on identity. And in this PowerPoint, I will be discussing how a child grows from early childhood, middle childhood, and late childhood, and how their identity changes throughout each stage of life. So, to start off, we're going to talk about what exactly is identity. And as a summary of what identity is, it is a self constructed definition of who one thinks one is and what things are important to accomplish in life. And to kind of abbreviate this statement, it is basically how a child perceives themselves as an individual, how they see themselves in the classroom, how they see themselves as a student, as a child. This is how they believe they are. They will make statements such as, "Hi, I am Lauren. This is what I do. I can color, I can jump, I can do this or that." They'll make simple statements about their abilities. And as a child will grow older, they will eventually evolve their perceptions of themselves, and their explanations will become even more complex as they become more aware of their sense of selves. And pretty much they'll create a self concept, which is a total picture of their abilities and their traits. They'll learn more about themselves and their capabilities. So, for the building blocks of their self identity, we'll look into their early childhood identity. And pretty much in early childhood, which is about, we'll say, around the age of 3, they'll start identifying themselves in very simple statements, such as, "I am Cody, I am 3, and I can count." Statements of that sense. And they'll start beginning to develop their self-image, but it'll be very simple and it'll be very uplifting and optimistic. And during this time, when children are discovering their initial sense of self, it's important to encourage their positive thinking within themselves and to also help them express their individuality so they can start discovering their uniqueness. And so, an example of this positive reinforcement that I'm talking about is there is a book called Red by Michael Hall, which is simply about a red labeled crayon who is only able to write in blue. But in the beginning stages, he is labeled as red, so that is what he knows. He knows, "I am red." And so he carries this statement, we'll say in his early childhood, to begin to identify himself. So as children begin to evolve from their early childhood to middle childhood, they begin to understand exactly more complicated assets that they have. They begin to understand and say, "Hey, I am Lucy and I can jump. I can do this and I can do that." But they still do not recognize the things they are not great at doing. They're still continually being optimistic with their capabilities. And as an example, to refer back to the book Red, the red crayon that we know is only labeled as red, but is actually can write in blue, is still continuously trying to find a way how to be good as being labeled as the red crayon. So a child who is in the middle childhood identity stage is still recognizing that they are good at this and this is what they are told they are good at, so they continue to pursue what they are told they are good at. And during this time, when helping the children find their identity of their achievements, for an example, in a classroom setting, especially if they're being taught in groups, it's good to encourage the children who are making good choices and are doing good things to celebrate their achievements, but it's also important to teach them to also celebrate their achievements with their peers, because this also helps them to be encouraging for others and to also help others find their uniqueness as well. So, as we go from the middle childhood to late childhood in discovering their identity, we begin to see that children are becoming less confident in their abilities. They start going from being completely optimistic of what they can do into being a little bit less confident because they are a little bit more aware of their surroundings, and they are also taking risks in order to find their individuality. They start to do things that are outside of their norm. And when they are exploring these things, they look to their peers, they look to their teachers, their parents, they look to outside sources in order to get, that kind of, hey, am I doing a good job at this? Because they're unsure of themselves. And it's very important that during this stage in identity to be supportive of the children when they're exploring their different behaviors, because this type of motivation will keep encouraging them to continue their exploration of unique identity. And this will also boost their confidence because it's scary for them to try new things. So when they are trying new things and it is working out for them, and it's good things, it's good to continue to motivate them to look into what they are good at. This can also be correlated to the book I had mentioned earlier, Red, as the Red Crayon is, of course, exploring his identity as the red crayon. His peers are continually telling him that he is the red crayon, so he can't write in blue. Even though he keeps exploring different outlets, he concentrates very intensely on what his peers are recommending to him and what they think about him doing different things. And so whenever we are looking into the identity and a child's true self, especially in a classroom setting, it is important to understand what their identity truly is and their uniqueness, because it makes up who they are as a student, how they will learn in the classroom, and how they will act as an overall, child. To have a better understanding of a child means to have a better understanding of how to properly educate them. In the article, Your Image of the Child, Where Teaching Begins by Loris Malagazzi, the environment you construct around you and the children also reflect this image you have about the child. There's a difference between the environment you are able to build based on a preconceived image of the child and the environment that you can build based on the child you see in front of you. So it also goes back to creating a relationship with the child and not generalizing the children for the class. So not looking at the classroom as a whole, but looking as the child as an individual student and an individual learner. And this also helps motivate their identity uniqueness that they are looking for in themselves, because outside sources are recognizing them as an individual. And for a teacher to know a child's identity, it will improve individualizing learning for each child, and to also build an environment for children, and to also build a relationship with them. And building this environment and building this relationship will help encourage students and children to continually look for their uniqueness in the classroom or any kind of outside setting. So it's really cool to reflect on identity. When investigating what identity means for children, it was really interesting to see the type of impact that outside sources like teachers, parents, their peers, it's really interesting to see what kind of impact your opinion will have on them when they are discovering their identity. It is really cool and unique to see that how you reflect on their progress making, or how you say they're doing in their identity search, it really helps them build the person that they will eventually become. It's really interesting to see how that children will look for much of their validation from their peers and their teachers, and pretty much all of their family. It's really neat to see that their outcome of who they will eventually become is very dependent on who they are around. And for a child to really find their identity, it does require a lot of guidance of their peers and their surrounding adults to create a proper learning environment for them. That's why it's important as a outside source to continually encourage kids during their early, middle, and late childhood stages to really find good outlets for them and how to create the best learning environment for them. And so just to kind of summarize identity, identity for children is during the early and middle late childhood, they're discovering their true selves, and the kind of environment that you will create for these children will help guide them to find their unique selves. Thank you so much.